Let's start with a question about ethics. You may know the story. Imagine a trolley is barreling down the tracks out of control. The driver is passed out. And you see down the tracks there are five DePaul students, sitting on the tracks, distracted. They don't see the train is coming. In fact, you know that based on where they are, they will not be able to see the train and escape in time. The train is going down the tracks and it's going to kill them, 5 of them. You are standing on a footbridge over the tracks. Now, let's say you're a mechanical engineer or a physicist, so you know that if you put a significant enough weight in front of the train at the right distance, the footbridge happens to be at that distance, you can stop the train before it reaches the 5 students. You know what you need to stop the train. It's about 400 pounds. You're standing on a footbridge, you look around, and the only object that you find that is heavy enough to stop the train is this very heavy backpack. There's you and another person on the footbridge. This other person is carrying a very heavy backpack with let's say a full camping gear and photo equipment and other things. You know this is heavy enough to stop the train. The backpack is attached to this person's torso and the several parts. You only have about 2 seconds to put this weight in front of the train. The only chance you've got is push the person with the backpack off the bridge so that she would land on the tracks in time to stop the train. Would you do it? Would you push the person with the backpack in front of the train? Would you kill 1 person to save 5? Joshua Green and his collaborators, and well, in fact, other people before. This is a thought experiment proposed by Philippa Foot in the 1970s, and they've asked people across cultural contexts, across ages, and many other indicators, and most people would say that they won't push the 1 person to kill the 1 person to save 5. What would you do? Now, if you are in the majority and you choose that you wouldn't push the 1 person off the footbridge to save the 5 students on the track, consider this variation on this other case. Train is barreling down the tracks out of control, heading to kill 5 people, the 5 DePaul students. Now you look around and you see a lever. You're standing right next to it, you happen to be there, and you know that if you can pull the lever, you will switch the tracks and divert the train onto a parallel track. But you see there's 1 person down that track who will become the victim of the train. Would you pull the lever and sacrifice this 1 person to save the 5? It turns out this time that most people would save 5 at the cost of killing 1. The puzzle here, and I wonder what you would do. Most people actually would respond that they would pull the lever. Now what's the difference between a footbridge and the lever? cases. What's the difference? You're still killing one to save five. Joshua Green and his collaborators did this study, and they asked people these questions. They presented the same scenario. They asked the same questions for this thought experiment that's been around since the 70s, but they connected their subjects to functional magnetic resonance fMRI scan, and they noticed that there's a difference in these two cases. A different part of the brain is activated when we think about pushing the person off the bridge, when we think about pulling the lever. Basically, when we pull the lever, it's the frontal dorsal frontal medial prefrontal cortex part of the brain, which is associated with sort of making calculated rational decisions. And that's in fact what we do. We're calculating, in a way, the value of 5 lives compared to 1. When we think about pushing the person off the bridge, we're not even doing it. It's even just imaginatively thinking about doing it. A different part of the brain activates the ventromedial, which is on the side part of the prefrontal cortex, and it's a part of the brain that's associated with emotions. It turns out, it seems, that there's a part of our biological endowment, who we are as people, that is activated when we think morally, and it engages the emotions. Somehow, that emotional reaction, that adverse reaction against the idea of pushing someone, killing someone with our own hands, overrides the logical thought that sacrificing 1 to save 5, it's moral, it makes sense. The reason I bring up this case, this scenario, is in relation to how Appiah opens the introduction of the book. He tells a story of a baby girl born 40,000 years ago, kidnapped by time travelers and brought to 21st century New York City to be raised with the family there. And he tells us that this girl would grow up to be a normal 21st century human being. The point is that our biological endowment, our human nature, hasn't changed in the last 40,000 years. We've evolved as a species to be adapted to conditions of life that Homo sapiens, human beings, enjoyed 40,000 years ago. Those are tribal lives, lives where we encountered in our lifetimes about 180 to 200 people. That was our sense of the human community. Lives where if we encounter a stranger, someone that we haven't seen in our lives, someone that wasn't part of our community, someone who spoke differently, someone who brought different ways of doing, different ways of worshiping, different ways of relating to other human beings, different institutions and so on. People like that, people different, probably were coming with the intentions of stealing, plundering, conquering, and so on. Stranger meant danger. Now, the point of this thought experiment of the trolley and the footbridge is that emotional reaction that tells us we ought not to push this person, that at that gut level, that emotional level, that is rooted in our biological endowment, our human nature, that evolved for local tribal lives. So we are, by nature, inclined to care more about those people that we can touch, those people with whom we connect at the level of language, culture, practices. Even though we don't live in a world, the world of 40,000 years ago, when realistically, practically, those were the only people that really mattered for our lives. Now we live in a world that is globalized, in a world that is interconnected across distances. And the well-being of others, the well-being of those strangers that speak differently, with a different language and different accent, the world of those people that come with different religious practices, those people that look different, those 5 people down the track, the well-being of those people, the strangers, is inevitably intertwined with our own. That's the nature of the globalized world. So Appiah opens the book with this dilemma, and the implication is that the question of global citizenship, the question of how to live our lives in this globalized world, it's a question of morals, it's a question of culture, it's a question of education against our human natures, against the type of conditions for which we've evolved. And this is one of the things that I want to explore in this class, how really education is the key question, more than politics, more than questions of economic arrangements and so on. The real challenge for global citizenship, the real challenge for the issues for which global citizenship is supposed to be a response, issues like the threat of environmental decay, the threat of nuclear war, the threat of the depletion of the earth resources, and so on. These are issues that are essentially at its core challenges for education.